Hello everybody, today we'll be looking at the new Pico Voltex version 5, a mini controller made by Speedy Potato for the game Sound Voltex. Just a note, he sent me this controller for free for a review, but I'm not being paid to do this. So the Pico Voltex V5 is compatible with Konami's Sound Voltex e-amusement cloud, K-Shoot Mania, and unnamed Sound Voltex clone. Like the previous Pico Voltex version, this thing is tiny compared to an actual arcade-sized Sound Voltex controller. The price for it sits at $140. Pretty up there, yep. And this time, there isn't a cheaper unassembled version for purchase in the store. So let's see how it compares to the older version and if it lives up to that price point. This time the controller comes with a travel bag, which is honestly great since most people are buying this for the portability. It also comes with stickers, though I'm not sure if it's given in every purchase. The travel bag is alright. It holds the controller and has a pouch above to hold a cable if you need one. And right, just note that this controller uses USB Type-C, and it doesn't come with a cable, so I hope you have one at home. Version 5 comes in black unlike the previous version, which was, well, white. There's no other color option, which is sad, but understandable for a product like this. I mean, it's only made by one guy, and I don't imagine the customer base for this product is exactly huge enough for multiple different colors at once. The controller actually looks pretty good. It's very clean. The version 4 had a white 3D printed case, but this one is a nice black aluminum one, though both of them use the same silk-screened FR4 plate, albeit with a different design, and the LEDs are also positioned differently too. I wish the LEDs in the new version were also at the wings of the controller, like the previous one. It will make it look a lot more full, but the PCB itself isn't big enough for that. Speaking of the LEDs, let's talk about the PCB. This controller runs on an RP2040 chip and it pulls at 1000 Hz. So instead of having a Raspberry Pi Pico soldered onto the PCB like the previous version, the controller just has the RP2040 MCU. This makes the PCB so much cleaner, and everything needed is already on itself. The metal case in general also makes the controller a lot heavier, and due to the heavier weight, the controller slides around a lot less than before. The previous version was already impressive in how little it slid around, but this one does not move unless you're slamming the knobs pretty hard. To which, well, the rubber feet on the underside are actually still the same, so it really goes to show how much weight of a controller changes everything. The other immediately obvious thing is that the controller is bigger than the previous version, the controller is longer, and it's also a bit taller. Though the button positioning and the sizing are the same, it's just the knobs that are further away from the keys now. So Speedy actually listened to my suggestion in the previous review that the knobs were too close to the buttons and wasn't following the rough angle of an actual Sound Voltex controller. This time the angles do match up, not to mention that the knobs themselves are also bigger than before. With these changes to the knobs, playing on the controller is a lot more comfortable in general. It feels more natural too. On the older Pico Voltex and controllers like Mon's Pocket Voltex, if you got way too used to the different knob angle on it, you could actually end up injuring your thumb on accident when you move to an arcade cabinet. It has happened to my friend before. The new knob positioning should make the transition from going on a teeny controller like this to an arcade accurate controller a lot more seamless and less injury prone. The knob encoders are still born encoders like before, which are better and more durable than typical cheap encoders you can get elsewhere. But here's the cool thing, the knobs are hot swap. Yep, you can take them out and put them back. Holy shit, that's insanity. And you might be wondering, why? The reason for hot swap knobs is that even though born encoders are more durable, they actually still die eventually. And that has happened to people before. If your encoders ever die, you can just easily replace them. This newest bit about a Pico Voltex is the coolest bit to me. Holy heck, you have no idea how innovative and creative this is. The keycaps on the FX buttons are also bigger now. I said in my previous review that the older 2U keycaps were too small. So now they're actually 2.25U and a lot more comfortable to play with in general. The switches used are still Gateron Yellows, except this time, the new ones are Gateron Yellow Pros. These are already factory lubed. It's not the biggest change, but the fact that they're already factory lubed makes the key travel feel smoother, and lubing switches in general changes the sound. Also, I almost forgot to mention, the extra button that was between the FX keys in the V4 version is actually shifted to the back at where the USB port is on the V5. The controller modes are the same as before. When you first plug it in, it goes into the default gamepad mode. If you want to go to the mouse and keyboard mode, hold down BTA while plugging in the controller. And if you want to turn off the LEDs, hold down start while plugging it in. You can combine the key combinations. So if you want to turn off the LEDs and also use keyboard and mouse mode, you would have to hold down start and BTA to do that. And like before, modes aren't saved between cycles. So you have to repeat this hold button down and plug in every single time you want to boot into anything that isn't the default configuration. Same with LEDs. There's only one color cycle right now and that can't be changed. It's a little disappointing that the firmware is basically the same as before, but firmware is something that can be updated over time. The best way I can describe playing on a Pico Voltex V5 is like a refinement of the previous version. It was already a joy to play on the older one, but this one had fixed all of the hardware side issues that I had with it. I'm going to miss the LED shooting from the 3D printed case, but the newer one is just better because of the knob size and placement. Drills on the BT buttons are still a joy on this, and the 2.25U keycaps on the FX buttons also really help. It's a really good change because most of the time when you're trilling on FX, you're using your thumbs, and thumbs are bigger than fingers. Cross-handing knobs are a lot easier and less claustrophobic on the new version, though not that I really need to cross hands on such a tiny controller when it's so small that I can cheese them. But cross-handing is good practice, you don't want to mess up your muscle memory. But now the issue. This is really steep, especially considering the fact that you can get an actual arcade-accurate controller for another $30. This controller is definitely not for the general public. If it's going to be your first time playing Sound Voltex, I really don't recommend going for a mini-con like this. Don't get me wrong though, mini-cons like the Pico Voltex V4 and Mon's Pocket Voltex are great gateway drugs to get someone interested in dropping more money for an actual arcade-accurate controller. But since the price of this mini-con in particular is flying so close to the cost of an actual con, it's not a really good idea. As far as I can tell from all of this controller is for a niche. And that niche is for people who want to bring a portable, tiny Sound Voltex controller around. And they don't mind sacrificing arcade accuracy for that. I can see that you'd only be looking into getting one of these things when you already have an arcade-accurate Sound Voltex controller. The travel case this comes with also really makes the case that this isn't meant to be a seated at home for your most intense gaming sessions controller. Though come to think, this is actually the quietest video game controller I own. It's basically a keyboard. I guess I could see someone buying this if they absolutely need to get something quieter than an arcade controller and they don't have the space to store one as well. And that they also don't mind not having something arcade accurate because they have zero plans on touching an actual Sound Voltex cabinet one day. Most likely because they literally can't. I guess I could see this thing being an easier thing to convince your parents to buy compared to a gigantic controller on Christmas. But maybe that's only how my parents are like. But in the end, this is still a very specific scenario that most likely doesn't apply to you and for a lot of people out there. So please go get a full-size controller if you don't have one. Okay, but otherwise, this is actually the coolest thing to have as a Sound Voltex fanatic. It's very extra. Yeah, this controller is extremely extra, but it's very worth its price. I mean, I say this in seriousness. It has improved everywhere. It's the best Sound Voltex mini-con you can get, and the competition wasn't even that high. Like, I don't know why they over-engineered this thing so much. If you gave me a choice between the V4 and the V5, I'd pick the V5 in a heartbeat. It plays better, it sounds nicer, and I can't believe this was made by only one guy doing this as a side hobby. It's genuinely amazing how far he has come. From hand-wired 3D printed controllers sold on the K-Strip Mania subreddit to this pristine beast. It's so jacked out to the point that it reaches the point of premium in a custom keyboard sense because of the metal case. Like, in the previous version, I didn't bother modding the stabilizers or whatnot, but for this one, I did because on stock, the controller already sounds very nice. So if you're interested in getting a cute but super cool mini controller, you should consider this. It's definitely better than every mini-con I've ever seen for basically every video game out there. Here's some gameplay and thanks for watching.